Welcome back to the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm your host, East Coast Sam.
I'm another host, Legend Been One on Poker Stars. And Sam, before we begin this, I should really consult my simulation. So let me just first. Okay, I know what to do now. Okay, here we go. Last time, guys, we rounded things off just before the day 5 main event festivities were going to begin. Here we are now as the 2024 Worlds of Poker has pretty much concluded. I know that obviously we have the Worlds of Poker in Paradise later this year, but really kind of the main poker season has concluded. So we're going to discuss a few talking points here about what has transpired in the last few days.
Yep, we'll be going over the main event, including our thoughts on the final table, a heads-up match, as well as the winner. And we'll also be talking about the other events that occurred, as well as the new inductee to the Poker Hall of Fame. So lots to talk about.
Yeah, and so we had left off with about 464 players, I believe, with day 5 beginning in the main event, with kind of the Adrian Mateos kind of being the one of the favorites to make it pretty far. And we had gone over the whole list of who was left in and who we were rooting for, who we cared about. And obviously, as day 5, day 6, day 7 chugged along, my horses in the race would fall off one by one. A lot of
Mhm.
ace king against aces brutality, particularly from Mateos. And on day 5, he went from a big stack to out, relatively early in the grand scheme of things. And really, I kind of locked into the field as day 7 began, where there was, I think, like 59 players left. We had two ladies. We had Shu
Mhm.
Den Zhao and Kristen Foxen with decent chips as day 7 was beginning. And so I was really kind of mostly kind of locked into those two as that, action was taking place. And I gotta say, it was, obviously fun to kind of sweat having two women at the very end, as opposed to having just having one like Litsu or Jorgen Lim or whoever in the years past. So that was kind of nice. Unfortunately, Zhao, I think her lack of experience definitely kind of showed as day 7 continued on. I think she ended up busting in 30th place. But at
Mhm.
one point she had 30 million chips, which was, just a boatload. And I think one or two hands really kind of sunk her ship. And I feel like if maybe she had, played a bit more passively, but more carefully, she might have even made it to day 8 for all I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the day 7 chip counts, and it's just kind of amazing to see Jason Sagel, who made the final table, was third. Nicholas Astet, who made the final table, was fourth. Joe Sirach was sixth. Brian Kim was ninth. So definitely the people who made the final table were close to the top of the chip counts pretty much the whole way through. Obviously, Jonathan Tamayo was kind of bobbing and weaving, but we've talked in the past about how the day 7 chip leader tends to kind of flame out, and even somebody who's with 3 tables left, who's the chip leader with 27 to go, off more often than not, they don't have a big stack going into the final table or make the final table. But this year around, it really seemed like the top ranking competitors were the people who made it through to the end. And yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, Kristen Foxen was obviously the headliner because she was the last woman standing, but also because she's an extremely accomplished professional. And if she had made the final table with in the top 5 with any sort of decent amount of chips, I felt that she would have had a shot of winning the whole thing. And definitely with 2 tables left, looking at her chip stack, I really thought she had a shot of winning the whole thing. I mean, Nicholas Estad had been hyped up as probably the most accomplished online professional of all time, $48 million in tournament winnings. And again, as I mentioned, he was number 4 on day 7 with 63 big blinds. But I never really had heard of him. I
Same.
like never heard of him at all, period, pretty much. And yeah, I mean, Griff sort of emerged on day 8 as sort of being a big stack. He was at 90 big blinds, to start the final table. He really sort of, again, kind of came out of nowhere and became sort of a big guy. I hadn't really locked on him throughout. I mean, going over the other final table lists, Latinois, I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, really hadn't heard much about him. Boris Angelov, kind of same deal. I was really kind of disappointed with this final table list. Yeah, I mean, Joe Sirach, Brian Kim, I had heard of from previous events, but I didn't really know much about them. So I wasn't really super engaged in the final table. And, I probably just spent too much attention on Kristen Fox, and I should have had a little bit more of a rounded look at things in hindsight. But yeah, it's disappointing to kind of see how the final table wound up turning out.
On my side of things, I was impressed that we had, Foxen was the chip leader of the entire shebang with 15 players left and ended up
Yeah.
busting in 13th place. And it was kind of funny. It felt like the players that I was rooting for were, in my mind, definitely the top tier as far as talent and poker chops in the field. And they all kind of went out in these similar spots where they just kind of went too ambitious, maybe playing a higher variance game when I think that had they just kind of stuck to a bit more ABC-ish poker with their, expertise in working for them, I think they really could have navigated this field and lasted a lot longer. Brian Kim, Ested, and Fox, and even Ciroc. Ciroc maybe was the biggest wild card of the four. He maybe played the most, had the widest range of hands played, which it makes it really hard up to play against, as you don't know if he's on the strong side of his range, the 8-7 suiteds or the ace kings. So again, I really had high expectations for this quartet with 18 players left. And one of the games I always play is look at the top couple of chip stacks, look at the bottom couple of chip stacks, see how they do. And to my surprise, if you just studied the final 18 and the final two tables, the two short stacks to begin day 8 was actually two people that made the final table. And
Hmm.
one being, of course, Griff, who went from bottom of the count to the chip winner for the final table and then made it all the way to heads up. So I gotta say, like, that was very impressive. And obviously, I'm not sure if, most of the poker, audience really cares, but I kind of care enough that at least gave me one mild little bit of entertainment value for the proceedings, seeing how that sort of narrative would undergo. And obviously, Latinos was the chip winner of 18 left, and he, made the final table but didn't make it super far. And um, other than that, we had two players that we knew had made the final three tables in main events past 15 and 20 years ago, which again, it doesn't mean I care about how they do, but at least it's like, okay, that guy, okay, cool. That being, of course, Tamayo and Siegel.
Hmm.
And again, so much like years past, there was one day of the final table that I was not able to watch live due to work. So it meant that I was a bit more locked into the action. In this case, I saw the first day of the final table, the playing from 9 down to 4, or in this case 3. They changed it up due to the pace of bust outs, and so I had to watch the uh, final day of the tournament on rewatch. But I was able this time to actually lock the window on my laptop where I couldn't see how far into the 4 hours of action I was in. So that when I was fast forwarding through the breaks and fast forwarding through the lulls, I actually did not know when it was going to end. So that actually worked out for me as far as keeping the suspense factor in play for me. But as far as now that we're kind of caught up there, so as far as the
Hmm.
actual final table, yeah, I mean the personalities weren't really super expressive at the table. Obviously, I was rooting for Brian Kim and Joe Ciroc, I guess, just by default again, kind of as close to my horses in the race as possible. And I was surprised how this final table it was. There was a lot, a decent number of chip stacks that were short doubling up and not just going out right off the bat.
Hmm.
Two of the top 4 stacks were among the first 3 to bust out. So I guess you didn't have sort of that predictable 7th through ninth go out in 7th through ninth, and the top 3 are in the top 3. So that was okay. But you would think that even with all those elements in play, I would have loved this final table. Ultimately, I didn't love it. And I think I don't know if one of the reasons for me, and maybe you might disagree or agree, was I actually didn't really dig the commentary all that much this time around. There were a lot of people on Twitter also expressing their negativity on the focus of Law and Norm in the booth as Maria Ho was sort of adding her third man in the booth routine going. And I don't know. I found myself having it on mute for a lot of the when I was watching it live, and I don't know. I was that part of that's why I love Esfandiari. He did a great job sort of engaging in the comedic, silly stuff, but also being a very good poker mind to analyze the action. And I was missing that for this coverage.
Yeah, I mean, Lon and Norm are not poker experts. I mean, you'd think that after, 20 years of doing this, they'd have a little bit more chops than the average person. But yeah, I mean, Maria Ho, I think, has always been a pretty decent commentator. I also really like Nick Schulman and Ali Najad that they cut to them on break, and Nick Schulman's able to break down hands. I just really like their rapport with each other. They both are very knowledgeable about poker. They're not hamming it up to the camera or anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, I like Lon and Norm, partly for sentimental and nostalgic reasons, but they are kind of nice to just kind of have as a duo in the booth. I didn't notice huge problems with their commentary. Yeah, I mean, the early action was I thought, fairly slow. I mean, obviously no one wants to bust in ninth place. I mean, the payout structure again, I mean, you have a 250,000 jump twice. It's so top heavy that you're inclined to, really wait your spot and, not, not play these suboptimal spots unless you're Brian Kim or Nicholas Estad. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say about this early action. I didn't find it super riveting. Nothing really happened in terms of, fun things that happen on the rail or players bantering with each other, which again, I have mixed feelings about. I mean, obviously you want to play your game, you want to stay focused. That means not saying something, then don't say something. I understand that completely, but it just means the audience at home really just doesn't have much to work with beside, Joe McKeon standing on a rail with a computer.
Yeah, it's funny. The hand that for me kind of shaped the narrative of this final table actually took place before the final table began. It was a big hand between Griff and Siroc on day 8, where Siroc had flopped the nut straight, Griff had flopped bottom set, and then had rivered quads. And if you know get rid of that river card and replace it with a blank, then I think Siroc's going to have an overwhelming chip lead, and Griff is going to be pretty close to the bottom, and maybe even out if he plays his hand too strongly. And so as a result, I don't think it affected Siroc's gameplay at the final table, but it definitely affected his amount of wiggle room when you had so many short stacks playing it pretty tight early on. And so the hands he did play, they were usually at the top of their range when they would play back against him. And so he dipped down in the chip count a bit here and there. And then that ultimately led to him being short enough to go out in 8th place. Considering he was again in the top, top part of the chip counts when the final table began. Otherwise, the only other things that I really took note is that Tamayo played very tight, very early on for those first few, bust out times of the table, and also Sagal, he was fairly, his share of activity in the early goings, and then became pretty card dead for the back half of his stint at the final table. So he just kind of folded his way at that point into 4th place. Brian Kim, again, I felt that he was the most dangerous player, maybe next to Ested at this table. So I think Kim lost a fairly sizable chunk of chips at one point. He made a flush, and I think it was against Griff, and he lost to a full house that Griff made. So that kind of crippled him a little bit, and then that put him in a spot where he was willing to go 5-bet all in of king 6 suited against pocket tens and ultimately go out. And I really kind of felt that this was Ested's table to lose at that point once Kim went out like that. And again, it kind of reminded me, it was kind of a less extreme version of last year. We had these big bust outs where players were overplaying a hand, where I could kind of see the idea behind why they would make such a call or whatnot. I'm referring to, I think, like Siroc, Kim, and Ested in particular, the guys I think were the least afraid at this final table. But because of the leveling war of, can I get them to fold a pretty good hand, or are they at the bottom of the range here? It ultimately went against them when they're playing in the tie variance situations. So again, I was I was happy that the predictable idea of Aston winning this thing was not fulfilled, but at the same time, I didn't feel like Tamayo played this like unbelievably A plus plus game. It kind of felt very ABC. Oh, I happen to have aces when you have jacks. I have ace king when you have ace queen. It just felt like the cards kind of dictated the action more than the player.
Yeah, I mean, going into the final three, I mean, Estad had 74 big blinds, had the chip lead, but they were all only 12 big blinds apart. So, I mean, going into the final day, I'm expecting a bit of a slugfest. I mean, Estad obviously a very accomplished, intelligent professional, Tamayo sort of a grinder, and then Griff being the amateur. I thought it would be kind of an interesting clash seeing these three sort of different styles of poker, but that it would take place over a period of time because they were so deep, and then to see Estad go broke not even an hour into day 10. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I seriously thought he was going to win. Ultimately, I thought it was going to be Ested and Tamayo heads up, but then I just couldn't believe what I saw. I mean, I figured he's going to fold. He's got top pair. Okay, yeah, he's got a straight draw, but you got to just take a better spot. You're more skilled than Griff is. You can eventually get the better of him. You know, go out with your head held high, and he wouldn't do
Yeah, I mean
that.
it's not very easy to fold top pair. I get that, but and
Yeah.
it was a double suited board. So I guess if you're thinking he's up against a flush draw, then okay. But I didn't feel like it was within Griff's wheelhouse at that point to shove a flush draw like that. Maybe heads
Yeah.
up, different story. But in that spot, it felt like he was strong, and in a sense, again, King Jack there isn't really a bluff catcher if you ask me. And but again, these are guys playing for millions of dollars. We're just playing backseat quarterback here. But again, I would have folded there. And if I'm bluffed, I'm bluffed. But if I have that substantial of a skill edge over the other two, then I want to play as many hands as possible to see that edge through, and versus hoping that just as once that I'm not behind.
Yeah, and he also had he still had plenty of chips behind. There's still a lot to work with, even if you get bluffed. So I really don't understand that spot that he took. He seemed to immediately regret it afterward. He was a good sport. He shook everybody's hands. So, no complaints there in terms of his character. But man, I mean, I still can't believe that spot.
No. And then that led us to actually one of the better heads up matches I think we've really had in a few years here. I mean,
Mhm.
I think we've had a couple that were fairly back and forth the last couple of years. Uh, well, not counting last year, but 2021, 2022, well, it had some back and forth too. But I'd argue probably the best heads up match for the title since John Sin and Tony Miles. And again, if I was going to rank, because again, there were a good number of all-ins, and the chip lead kept changing. Griff had the chip lead to begin heads up. Tamayo just kind of ran him over for the first portion, and then Griff gets that one double to kind of swing things back and forth. It was just back and forth that we just don't see very often when it comes down to the final two. Maybe for other bracelet events, but for the main event, usually maybe you get one or two all-ins and to swing things up. But this had I think I didn't count it, but at least like four or five, maybe even six all-ins where the chip would kept changing, and so it was very entertaining. And again, even though I was watching it on replay, I was able to not be spoiled for when it was going to end by the video ending. So I was pleasantly surprised to see when the action ended. So I'd argue, with other heads up matches like, Ryan Reis, Jay Farber, Martin Statsko versus P.S. Hines, again, John Sin, Quewin, and Gordon Vail. Again, just definitely in the top, maybe top three, top four, maybe even top two if I really think about heads up matches for the title we've had.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly the best heads up match since the pandemic. I definitely thought it could have gone either way. Griff was definitely swinging for the fences, and Tamayo was sort of bobbing and weaving. But while Tamayo had the skill edge, there were definitely a couple times that Griff managed to get bluffs through. Tamayo also did get hit by the deck more than Griff. If
Yes.
those a few of those hands had changed, I mean, Griff could have taken this. I mean, he had pocket sevens versus king 10. He hits a seven on that flop, he's the world champion. So, just a couple little hands go differently. Um, Griff wins this. And yeah, I mean, part of me as an amateur, I'm sort of rooting for the amateur to win. I want to see him take it down. But again, I thought Tamayo played pretty well heads up. I mean, he manages to call with, top pair, no kicker when Griff bet 75 million and just sort of waited his spot and got there. So, I don't have too much resentment just in terms of Tamayo winning by itself. I mean, should we get into the big topic of
Yeah,
discussion
so
in
probably the
November?
biggest discussion point after this main event finished was videos or photos of Tamayo's rail. He's roommates with Joe McKeon, who we've expressed our opinions about him in the past, and sort of having these like tablets with like Sims on them and checking them out and in between hands and whatnot. And again, I feel like if you're going to have people on your rail who are going to give you advice, then having a program on a tablet that they're holding and they're showing you, I think it's fair game given everything else that is allowed in this. But I just think that in the nature and the spirit of the game and of competition and poker, I feel it doesn't ring true for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, it's lawful, it's legal. People were saying that, oh, Tamayo, it amounted to electronic interference, so his win should be nullified and Griff should be the champion. I wouldn't go that far. Tamayo shouldn't be docked. It's all within the rules. But yeah, it would be nice for the game if that wasn't allowed anymore. And the fact that Tamayo had, a rail stocked with, you know, killers versus Griff had his family and
Right.
Ronnie Barda. No offense to Ronnie Barda, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, had a murderer's row of people out there, giving him advice, willing to go over sims for him, willing to go over charts with him. Obviously, it's an unfair advantage there, but I mean, there's only so much you can do about that, right? I mean, as long as you have the rails open, you should be allowed to invite anybody you want. If you want to invite in a coach, if you want to invite in your friends who are top pros to go over hands with you, I think that part's okay. It's when you bring in the tablets and the computers that I think it starts to run into a bit of a problem. But again, it was legal, it was lawful. I don't think Tamayo should be blocked or have his win voided. He's again clearly a very good player. I know again Griff had the story of the Cinderella story, the amateur coming out of nowhere. I think Tamayo's got a story too. Here's a grinder who's won 4 circuit rings, never had that breakthrough big moment. Here's his breakthrough big moment. I think it's a good, inspiring win for semi-professionals and grinders who keep at it, never quite get there, and then finally get there. I mean, that's a nice story. And just the fact that, here he is friends with Joe McKeon, they both have their banners up at, top together. So I think that's kind of nice in a, friendship type way.
No, I agree. And again, I try to think if it was me playing against a player that had all that, I mean, I'm gonna have, I guess, my family, some friends on my rail. Back when this was on ESPN, I'd have maybe somebody watching on ESPN and maybe like screenshotting the hands that players have so that I can be showing them. They can tell me, oh, he bluffed you here, he had you there. I don't know. I mean, I know that some poker coaches, charge a percentage to be on your rail. I remember seeing tweets from like Helmuth and stuff saying like, oh, if you make the final table, let me know, 2% I'm in. I'm like, I wouldn't want to pay someone to help. I want someone to want to help me, to want to help me, So I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. Obviously, if Tamayo's friends with McKean, I don't think it was charging him probably. But there's something to be said about if you know somebody has tool A, B, C, D, E on their side, then maybe you adjust your game to try to throw that off. But again, that only gets you so far when you're heads up. I mean, heads up poker is pretty raw, pure poker. So I don't think that Tamayo was dramatically changing his game from this, information. Obviously, 9-3 offsuit is still 9-3 offsuit, when you're playing
Right.
heads up. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see if there are any rules enacted in place in future iterations of the main event. Maybe even by the World Chess Poker in Paradise later this year. We'll see if maybe because again, in a casino, they can control what you bring into the rooms. Like, they have metal detectors, they have, methods to prevent, if they really wanted to block this, they could do that very, very easily. But we'll have to see. Again, I'm sure the players and the directors, they will be in communication. They'll discuss it, and I'll be happy to see what comes of this because I personally think it's no harm, no foul yet. It's when maybe someone pushes it too far in the future where they have it like on in their pocket or something else that could make it even worse. And we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it should never be allowed that you have, a phone or a tablet with that information on it while you're sitting at the table, right? And as long as you're able to do that, of course people are going to do that, right? You're playing heads up for $10 million for the World Championship. You'd have to be an idiot not to take advantage of any rule or anything that you can get to help you win. So I don't blame Tamayo for doing any of this. I think it's ridiculous that people want his win taken away or fined. Just have this in the rule book that you can't do this anymore. It's like the Jamie Gold rule, right? Like Jamie Gold was telling his hands, and then they implemented a rule saying you couldn't do that anymore, right? That's what they should just do with this. Just ban computers or solvers on the rail. By no means should you not have a rail. I saw some people on Reddit saying, "Oh, there just shouldn't be rails at the final table anymore. It should just be two guys." That would be boring. I mean, I don't want to see that. I like seeing the family there. They kept cutting to Griff's wife and she was crying and she was emotional. Like that was really like heartfelt for me. Like this is a big deal, him winning $6 million, him providing for his family. You have to have moments like that. And I think that's totally fine. But yeah, just get rid of the solvers and just try to have this be as pure as you can.
Yeah, so ultimately, I thought that the final day of the final table was very good overall.
Hmm.
Shocking at departure of Estet, and then a very good heads up match. And I wouldn't say it salvages the whole final table, which wasn't bad in the first day, it just wasn't like, very
Yeah.
exciting really for me. So I definitely I wouldn't put it in the bottom tier of the final table. I'll put it sort of maybe in that second tier above it, maybe in the middle bottom of that part, which again
Hmm.
is fine. I mean, I'm not expected to have Phil Ivey and Grano and Helmuth be in every final table. I mean, that's unreasonable, but again, it's a point of comparison. I do wonder if they'll maybe adjust I'll adjust my expectations of next year, what to expect. Because again, this had if you were in the poker scene, I think you had some big names. You're probably pretty excited about this final table before it began. But I think to average Joe, I don't think they would be.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, again, Tamayo was, a grinder, somebody who wasn't super prominent. Estad, again, neither of us had ever heard of him, and we have this podcast, so I don't think, yeah. I mean, and even if Kristen Fox had made, I mean, a lot of people were saying, oh, there's going to be there would have been a poker boom if she had won. I mean, okay, I think more women would have signed up, and yeah,
Probably.
next year they'd have had like, I don't know, 11,000, 12,000 entries. But I mean, we're behind a paywall now. ESPN isn't running this anymore. That was part of it, that ESPN was running it. It was the first year they were making a commitment to show the entire World Series. They had it on reruns all the time. And it was, coming right when online poker was booming. There needs to be more ingredients in there beside a popular winner, unless it's Taylor Swift winning the main event.
That'd be
Uh,
pretty.
That'd be pretty sick, yeah. If a major celebrity like Taylor Swift or somebody won the main event, then okay, I could see like a boom happening, but not somebody like Kristen Fox, and no offense to her, or even somebody like if Phil Hellmuth won again, there wouldn't be a poker boom again. You need to have more ingredients in there in order for there to be a boom. And yeah, on the whole, like yeah, this was overall a fun, interesting main event to watch. Um, Tamayo isn't again the most exciting winner. You could say he kind of backed into the wind, so to speak. I don't know. I mean, he found his right
Not
spot.
quite that. Not quite that. I would say like one notch above that. Not quite like Jorstad, for example. Like I would,
Mhm.
or even Weinman. I would say, maybe one notch on that scale of crushed it, killed it, earned it to was handed it. It was definitely, like maybe over here.
Yeah, I mean it was a lot similar to last year in that you had, a very successful player finishing in seventh, and then a heads-up match between a sort of grinder who hadn't had like a huge breakthrough but was looking for it, and an amateur, and then the amateur flops top pair. It was kind of just exactly like previous year. Yeah, I mean, again, Tamayo, credit to him. We're not trying to, take away anything from him, but yeah, I mean, it would have been nice on an optical level to have, Griff just sort of swing for the fences and win it. I definitely got the sense from Griff that, when he had the 3-1 chip lead a couple times, like he just wanted to end it. He just wanted to get it done. And, maybe if he had just been a little bit better with those spots, he could have pulled it off. But yeah, on the whole, again, no real complaints, nothing that I would, drastically overhaul for the main event next year. I'm just looking forward to see what'll happen.
Well, I'll say this. I was actually pretty let down by the coverage this year overall.
Mhm.
There was a lot of
Yeah.
technical issues, especially on day 5 and day 6. If you check Poker Go, you'll notice I think day 5 was divided into 3 sections because they had such tech issues. They had to break it up into more than usually they had the first part before dinner break and then part two after dinner break. They had so many tech issues that it had divided into 3 sections. And even day 6 wasn't playing right when I was trying to rewatch it after work for the first part. So again, a lot of issues, graphical issues. Again, I didn't love some of the commentary sections for a lot of the days, and so I actually would put the stream coverage at the bottom of the 4 post-pandemic main events coverages so far as a result of that. And it doesn't mean I was hating things or bored or anything, but I just feel like, comparatively speaking, I was let down by that, and I would hope that next year they would improve things.
Yeah, at the final table, I didn't notice as many issues, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely reminded of just like weird cuts, weird times where the mic wasn't synchronized. So, Jeff Platt would be out in the field, but the audio would be coming from the built-in microphone on the camera instead of the microphone he was holding. I mean, just little things, just in terms of logistics that they need to plan out. You know, I I'm not an expert in how live television works, but I mean, you have a director who's looking at the screens, knows where the cameras are cutting to, knows what the audio is cutting to. It's not that hard to just say, okay, camera one, we're cutting to you now. Microphone one, we're going to have the audio go through there. I mean, just little mechanical things that they really do need to work on. Yeah, as I mentioned, I didn't notice too many problems with the commentary, but it could be nice maybe to have, Antonio Esfandiari back. They had him very briefly, or just bring some new blood and new life in there. You don't have to have it be Lon and Norm every single day. You can have, Maria Ho and Jesse Sylvia I thought did pretty good. I mean, he's definitely improving as a commentator. Not like he's a world-class commentator, but he's doing well. You could have him and Maria talk about it. You can have somebody else, a new commentator bring it in. That could be nice to change things up.
Well, I loved Jared Blesnick when he was covering the PPC coverage
Yeah,
before the main event. So that was, I think, someone maybe deserves an extra shout or two. But he plays other events too, so I don't want to, interrupt his career trying to, because he got his first Bristol this year after all.
right.
As far as the Player of the Year race, Scott Seaver held off Osmus for the last few events. His 3 bracelets and a couple of the deep runs catapulted him to a comfortable 600-point lead over second place Michael Rocco. Osmus didn't win a bracelet, but he had, I think, I lost count, but I think like 6 or 7 final tables where
Yeah.
he wasn't like, the first one out on any of these. He was making it to heads up, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, pretty much every number you can think of in the final table. So again, very impressive. That they had a fun little 1-2 race, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire type thing.
Right.
I guess I'm not sure if the World Series in Paradise continues off the points or if it's just for the Las Vegas events. But
Hmm.
for now, I think Seaver's got it locked up. So good for him. He played a great year, and I expect him to, maybe give Helmut a little bit of a, nervous bracelet chip bracelet increase over the next couple of years. You never know. Ivy had besides that one bracelet had a couple other good finishes too. So I think he and Seaver should be in the back of Helmut's mind going forward as he's still at 17. And it only takes us a couple of years of a few more bracelets here and there to make it a big race for the top spot.
Yeah, I mean, he's now at Scott Seaver's now at 7 bracelets. He's won 4 in the last 3 years. So yeah, I mean, he could definitely be a contender, and it'd be nice to see. I mean, Phil Ivey got 10th in the Player of the Year race, which is pretty respectable. Nice to see if Phil Ivey can kind of get back into WSOP and win a couple for himself. It'd be fun to have a bracelet run for the top spot. That would be really nice for the game.
Yeah, and other than that, one thing that follow every day or every week when they come out are the Matusow vlogs. And this year, it just felt like he would just get more and more depressed and angry as the series went on. You know, he doesn't enter every event like other players might do for Player of the Year purposes, but he plays a lot of the mixed games, the limit games, and he's always saying how he never wins a hand and like he never has a double stack in any of these limit games. And you know, he it's just the cringe comedy is strong on these videos, so I just love watching them personally.
Yeah, every single vlog, well, here I am going for the 500 Omaha tournament. I'm really thinking this is going to be my game. Then it cuts. Well, I just busted out of the 500 Omaha tournament. I mean, he's just, again, like, I'm not trying to be mean, but just seeing him, like, zip around the casino, and it's mostly just sort of like empty hallways or him just, zipping by people. And occasionally he'll get somebody like bring a chair for him and he won't really acknowledge them. Like it's just kind of just like a sad cringe. But probably the highlight of Mike Matisow's vlogs for me was him being reunited with the man who ended his 2005 main event, Scott Lazar, which was just hilarious. I thought when I saw Scott Lazar at first, I thought it was a joke, and then Mike just kept talking to him, and then later, as he's like summarizing it, he's like, God just had to pair me with Scott Lazar at the same table. Like I couldn't believe it. It was astonished. There's no words.
I mean, he didn't end Minnesota's final table run in '05, but he took
Yeah,
the lion's share of his chips to begin that proceedings of that fateful
that's
night.
true.
And Matusow, he did end strong. He did final or bubble the final table of the closer. He got 10th
Hmm.
place, so he won I think like $40,000. So maybe he almost broke even for the series, which I guess is not bad when you're running that poorly. I mean, he had a pretty big stack on the main event on day two and ended up, I think, busting aces against Ace King. And I'd
Yeah.
like to think that maybe had that hand gone the other way, maybe he makes a run of it. He had that run of like 4 or 5 consecutive main event cashes prior to last year. And so I think that Matusow definitely has an edge, a substantial edge over those total amateurs. He's got a very good reading ability, and I think he's very good at balancing his range when people think he's very tight versus very aggressive. And so I think that's why we see him accumulate chips in those sort of spots so many times. It's just that he makes me that one mistake that Mike Matusow blew up, and then all of a sudden all bets are off at that point. But again, I enjoy watching his vlogs. He did have a few cashes here. He didn't like bagel all these events. He just ran poorly or made some very bad mistakes. He didn't complain about his pain in his back as much this year. I think he finally found a regimen that worked for him. So I was happy for him in that respect. But I just think that, Matusow, if poker is this stressful for you, maybe just don't play it anymore. I mean, it's just maybe save some money, save the stress, just do something else with your life, maybe if it's that painful for you.
And of course, we're both looking forward to the Matusow documentary, which you mentioned a couple times in the vlogs that's done. So we'll hopefully watch that soon. I'm really curious to see what it is. If it is it going to be him going over his whole life? Is it just weird antics? Like what exactly is it going to be? I'm very curious.
Yeah, I'm very curious too. And again, it's been a while since we covered a horror documentary, and so we're excited to get back on that horse, just to see what it's like. Besides that, the last roster of events in the World Series that we're running concurrently with the main event, I didn't really hear anything or see any big stories at all, really. I mean, Blesnik won a bracelet, that's kind of cool.
Hmm.
I think that Alex Livingston won a bracelet again. So again, he's been one of those very successful players the last couple of years, or I think really since that big third place finish in the main event 5 years ago, he's been at another level. Um, one one issue I have with the reporting of the World Series is they don't really give us like a report on the online events on the websites. I wish, I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have to give me a full detail hand history and all that stuff, but just at least show me the results, the final table, who won, all that stuff, just so I can sort of know, because those are bracelets still, even if they're not in person. And they ran 28 of these events, and so I'd like to know if anyone important won one of them.
Yeah, I mean, some players did do pretty well in the online events. Tony Dunst won a bracelet in an online event. With somebody like him who's a fairly prominent player, it'd be nice to see, just a little description of what exactly happened. Did he start at the final table at the top of the stack and just played a game like that, or did he sort of have to work his way up? Just a little bit of information would be nice.
And as far as that, I know Boston Rob briefly appeared in the stream at one day. I know that
Mhm.
showed that Esfandiari ever so briefly. I don't think he played the main event, even though I would have loved to have seen him. Because, again, he had been kind of one of those old school pros of the mid to late 2000s that had been pretty successful in the late 2010s. So I would have liked to have seen him keep playing. But, to each their own, I guess. Obviously, he's got a family to worry about. As far as looking ahead to next year, obviously, with Negreanu off of the bracelet, Schnei, I guess Matusow is next because Ivy won one recently, and Helmuth's, still winning them pretty regularly. So I guess Matusow is next in line as far as my bracelet watch people. Uh,
Mhm.
Adam Grossack does really want to play the tag team event with me that next year, and so I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not ruling it out, but obviously with work and vacation and other events happening in that part of the year for me, I have to make it has to all make sense, and I don't want to fake being sick of Ferris Bueller thing. That's not my style. If I can make it work, I can afford $500 for the tag team event if Adam wants to do it with me that badly. I'll probably just have him play most of it. I'll play maybe the level one or two or something like that. But it would be pretty cool to at least not fully embarrass myself should we actually go ahead and play that.
I, of course, would be on your rail and I would support you however I could. And I will eventually go to In-N-Out Burger at some point during that trip, but I will have it be at a convenient time so as to not inconvenience you and to create a good rail for you.
I appreciate that. And obviously, we have other things in Vegas to check out. Should we make a return trip? I've been there twice. You've been there once, but again, you can't cover even a fraction of Vegas in only a few days like we did. So that's part of the non-poker escapade that we could have should we have a sequel type situation for that. Other than that, I don't really know if there's anything else as far as being the poker world. We don't know anything about Game of Gold season two. I know that Poker Go was under the usual annual scrutiny of, oh, I mean, it should be a paywall, and I see that, it's not free to produce this content, but at the same time, the whole point of this coverage is to get as many eyeballs as possible and to stir up more poker interest. And so if only poker players are watching, that doesn't really help things. Whereas you want those amateurs, those newbies, people that have never heard of poker or never watched it before. You want to kind of suck them in and at least get a little bit of that in their brain so that maybe they can, change up their spending habits. And so I see that on YouTube they have like those 1 hour free previews, but I don't think that does it
Mhm.
justice really.
Yeah, a lot of people were complaining because three-handed they cut the 1 hour preview short because SDAD busted or something like that. I mean, yeah, apparently there's a deal between PokerGo and CBS Sports to do stuff, but I haven't seen CBS Sports ever air the WSOP, so I don't know if they're making content or not. It'd be nice if they could package some content for the general audience and get it out there, like they did back in the golden era during the 2000s. But for what it is, you went through all the technical problems. They do need to work some stuff out, and hopefully they can do that next year.
Yeah, and again, Go, it's with streaming services in particular, the pricing is so tricky because you pay $15 for a movie ticket. That's 2 hours of content.
Right.
People complain of Netflix goes from $10 a month to $11 a month, but I mean it's not that much. And if that $1 is such a big deal, then you really shouldn't be buying it in the first place. I mean, I know that the economy, politics, all that stuff is tough, but you don't have nobody's making you buy a streaming service. So if it's that big a deal, or just only buy it for the 1 month or something if you want to watch the main event. I don't know. I mean, obviously the 6 month, 3 month annual are cheaper, but it's kind of silly to me.
Yeah, I mean, they could sell main event passes and have, if you want to watch the main event, you can watch it on a discount. And then if you want to keep going with Poker Go, you have a discount for a year. I think that'd be kind of a nice idea. That might be something they could look into, but I don't know. I mean,
I mean, they sprinkle in a few ad drops or little things in there. Maybe
yeah.
advertise the other Pogo programs. Oh, how Poker's coming back next week or something like that. So it's not like they're not getting some of those other ad juices into the mix. But I don't know. It's just something that people are talking about. So I figure it's worth mentioning here.
Yeah, I mean, Poker Go, it would be also nice if they could supply you more original content, something similar to Game of Gold or just, something other than, just cash games and stuff. Like if they did their own documentaries, Poker Go presents, Matusow documentary or a Phil Ivey documentary or something. I think that would be kind of nice for them. And that would, again, encourage people to sign up and pay more money if they started
I mean,
doing
there's
that.
a few things already on the streaming service platform, stuff that we haven't watched yet that maybe we could watch if we really wanted to. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's such a niche thing at this point, even though the main event sizes and fields of these tournaments are growing. I feel like I don't know. It just seems like they can do a lot more to attract more eyeballs than what they've been doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think, but on that note, this is again another kind of mini episode. We don't really have that's we kind of given all of our thoughts here. That's our thoughts. If you guys have any thoughts on the main event, what happened, what we've discussed, or anything you want us to talk about in the future, let us know in the comments section. I'm very curious what will come out into the poker world next that we can talk about. Right now we've kind of hit that sort of bottleneck of stuff. So we'll see if anything pops up. Obviously, massive documentaries on our radar, but there's no released yet, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for when that will come out.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I wanted to add was that they announced Patrick Antonius is
Oh,
the
that's right.
Hall of Fame inductee for this year. Yeah, I mean, I like Patrick. Obviously he's a lot of fun to watch on television. He's had, nearly $23 million in career earnings. Uh, obviously F's in the chat for Matusow that he still just can't. I think if he wins like one more bracelet, I think then he would make the Hall of Fame, but he's just not quite at that level yet. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Patrick Antonius making it. I think everybody else who's been nominated, Kathy Liebert was another nominee. They'll make it in eventually, but I don't have like a huge problem with this pick.
Well, it's good to mention that too, because there's kind of again they only let in one person a year, and a lot of people are coming up to the age of eligibility, and that could definitely restrict a lot of people that have been kind of waiting or been waiting for a while. So you have to wonder if maybe they'll make it even two people, or like they'll do like one modernish, one old school player, kind of like how the NFL does with the Hall of Fame, just to sort of have a bit more opportunity for people to not be on a waiting list for possibly forever if enough youngsters get old enough to qualify. So we'll see. Matusow, I think, does deserve it, although I don't know. I feel like he kind of reminds me of Terrell Owens, where it took him a while because of his reputation and attitude, and so maybe he might fall into that same pitfall.
Yeah, I mean, Hall of Fames have it be based on just sort of vote counts that, they have 100 members, and if 75% of them vote on somebody to make it, and it goes in regardless of how many people are selected. So some years, 8 players go in, other years, 10 players go in. I think they can do something like that. There's no need to have just one person. If you want to have, one modern player, somebody who started their career in 2010 onward versus one older player, somebody who started their career before 2010, I think that's okay, but there's no need to limit to just one. But again, I think everybody who's been nominated will eventually go in, so it's not a huge deal. But yeah, I think Matusow might be becoming the Terrell Owens of poker. That might be interesting.
That's kind of good. I mean, that'd be a good little parallel. But
Yeah.
on that, folks, guys, I think that's it for now. We'll see you next time, and enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, and enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care, everyone.